Welcome to The Backstory, a special series from Future of Faith. In each episode, we take a look behind the scenes of projects from the National Storytelling Initiative on Christian Faith and Life. We'll be pulling back the curtains on our own work, sharing the wins and the struggles, and inviting others on to do the same. We're going to learn from each other and build this community together.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back in. Super excited to be here with my colleagues and friends. Okay, so I have my standard question of any updates on your projects thus far since we last chatted that you'd like to share. Josh, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah. So the big news here is that we have hired our project director on the Future Faith side of this. I think as people know by now, it's a joint effort with us at Virginia Theological Seminary. So VTS has their own director for the theological work, but the sort of outward-facing storytelling event programming work is ours to handle. I've been sort of just doing my best to stand in that gap until we could get Nikki Collins on board. She was previously helping to run 1001 New Worship Communities. She was leading that effort at the PCUSA. This project was sort of, born out of her head and then evolved through a lot of input. And so we're just delighted to be able to have like the sort of originator of the idea coming on board to then help execute it over the next 5 years. And I was running out of the things that I felt like I could do without making decisions that Nikki would have to be responsible for. So I'm really glad now that she's here and we can get all back into our correct lanes. And even just like, I'll tell you, just 1 week into having the right person in the right spot, the momentum is so clear. I mean, I'm sure y'all have experienced that in other things, but man, I was just reminded of it in a big way this week.
Oh, that's super exciting. So your team is filling out to actually get the thing done.
Yeah.
Is there more of that on the horizon, or is
Well, it'll impact us in two ways. So there is one more position that we'll hire for, which was another thing. Like I wasn't going to spend time in these first couple of months, like hiring somebody that she would then have to supervise. So soon we'll hire somebody who's in like sort of like a digital media liaison person. Like we hope that they can produce some real things, but also speak to the people who produce these things, like, and talk contractor, video, AV production language. So we'll be trying to find that person. But also the project then like generally will buy us some capacity at Future of Faith. In terms of like, where Megan Bissell and I are assigned to be support for this project will open up other places for people to come on. And so there will be this like ripple effect in our organization, this sort of like hidden ways that these grants impact all of our orgs.
it's good to hear and a good reminder, I think, for folks listening in who either receive or are still in the process of trying to decide how to fill out their team. I mean, you're a few months in and are hiring now the person that is the key person to really begin moving things forward. And so affirming everyone who's on different schedules
Yeah.
of like one having the full team ready to go. And we're going to hear actually more about this in a bit with the interview, but teams that are ready to go and hit the ground running, to those who are like, wow, we're building out
Yeah.
the skill set and the voices and the expertise needed to actually do the thing that we said we were going to do. So just affirming wherever you fall on that journey.
Yes,
Uh,
it's fine. I've been on both sides of it. I've been like we've hired before the project even started, and this I don't it just you take it as they go.
that's
It.
good. Shannon, what about you? What's the update?
Yeah, well, that is not where we're at. Like, we have not hired. We've taken a very different approach because we're really investing in the experts to help us build the project. So, it's so different than the Really Good grant that we have. Which I love. It's just testing different muscles, right? But we've gotten together. So we're really letting Asha and company is really leading us. Their marketing, digital design, and they do a lot of social impact work. So like in terms of really changing behavior and changing how people engage with things. So we're excited, and I'm learning a ton. It feels like I'm being led. So it feels like I'm not in the room facilitating. But yeah, so we got together last month and it was just incredible. But we don't have this thing to show you yet. And we'll be together again in May. So we're just doing tons of work, but they're really leading the process. So I feel like it's still a watch this space.
I was
Yeah.
talking with another grantee recently, storytelling grantee recently, and I was telling them I have never regretted taking the time to listen and
Yeah.
discern.
Me
I
too.
and Josh have never right, like never, and I've also never regretted hire figuring out who is the exact right person to do the job and taking the time it is necessary to bring them on board. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful to hear both of y'all's journeys inside of that of yeah, just never regretted listening or taking the time to figure things out, with especially with the right people at the table.
And then there's a point, right, where you have to have the capacity on the team,
Sure.
right? And so, I mean, it's just right now we're outsourcing that capacity, and at some point we'll have to build our internal capacity, I think. But yeah,
It's
that's
the
what.
biggest reason I can think of for, you know, Lilly tells you that they're up to 5-year grants, and almost everybody takes the 5 years. You don't have to. I mean, I think was it Melissa at Austin saying that there's 4 years or something? And I think if you know exactly what you're doing, and who's gonna do it, uh, you know, maybe you could do it in 3 or 4 years, but I think one of the biggest reasons for taking the full 5 is so you don't have to hurry, especially at the beginning. That you really can, because a lot of times these people that you want to, if it's, I mean, think about a $5 million initiative in any other business. You would want somebody in leadership for that initiative that likely already has a job. I mean, this is not like probably a fresh out of undergraduate person, and so it does potentially take some time for that person to gracefully exit. You know, for you to interview people to get them into the right place. I mean, it's a whole thing, and I think that's the biggest argument for me about taking the full 5 years. It's not that we couldn't do, $5 million worth of value in 4 years or three and a half even, but sometimes you just need the time to do it well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm starting to meet others that did it in 4. We've our storytelling grant is 5, but again, the Rooted Good grant that we have with Thriving Congregations is 4. We've done 4 both times, and
Mhm.
actually, I don't think it made us go faster. I think we still took that time, but for us, sometimes it's a line of sight issue. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Anyway,
and what the concept is, I feel like I've again talked with a number of other grantees recently who and as they're thinking about their budget and various and how they've allocated funding. I mean, some of those have really front loaded a lot of the money at the beginning as they're thinking about production and work like that, and then others have actually backloaded a lot of theirs as they're thinking about distribution, and depending on the project, depending on the concept, depending on the structure of the organization or the trajectory of what's going of the storytelling initiative itself. People kind of are all over the map with how they're thinking about even the allocation of that $5 million across the 4 to 5 years. I think most of the projects are that 4 to 5 year range, and
Yeah.
so affirming folks
mm,
as they're discerning what's best for them. I mean, have if folks are doing a series of short form videos, community based harvesting, and trickling them out over the 5 years versus one huge documentary project. I mean, it looks very different with the
Right.
pace and what's required. So affirming all of those things. Okay, I have a question as we on ramp into this really great interview with our friend John. I want to ask, one of the themes from that interview was um how has the difference between this project kind of hitting on the very thing that y'all do, or the various organizations that are in the pool actually do, and then what is kind of outside those bounds that this project and initiative is inviting you to expand upon. And, so whether it's like scaling what you do really, really well and taking it to the next level to new audiences, or trying something very new, I'd love to hear for y'all inside of your projects where this falls for you. And if you're
Hmm.
willing, the honesty of like what if you're able at this point to name what feels too far outside, and maybe you don't have an answer to that, but also what feels like squarely like actually this is our sweet spot. So, I don't know,
Uh,
whichever of you wants to respond first.
Go on, Josh.
um, well, I think this would have been such an easier question to answer at almost literally any other place that I've worked because those other places were about a thing. So like the last stop at the National Catholic Educational Association, I mean, that was about Catholic education. We knew exactly what that was for. Springtide was about doing research. When I was at the university, it was about mentoring students. Future faith is more about a way of being than a what of being. And, what we're trying to do is help the church to be more relational, to help the church listen more, and so that lends itself naturally to a lot of different kinds of outputs. And that was just a tension that we were willing to hold. We understand that like that's not an awesome business model. like it really is like having a clearly defined product offering is probably the more tried and true route to success. But we just believe so firmly in that we wanted to do it, which meant that on the one hand, is our storytelling project within scope? I have no idea. And on the other hand, it's definitely in scope because the way we are doing this project is highly relational. It's rooted in listening. We're not just parachuting into these communities, extracting stories and then leaving. And so all of that feels for me like dead center of the bullseye. It is also stuff that we could have done not through storytelling, but through like the upcoming Christian Practices initiative that Lilly has put out, which I think for their 60 slots, they're anticipating what, like 100 applications? Do y'all think maybe 110? um, like we can do. So in other words, like I think a lot. If what we do is kind of like a methodology, we can fit into a lot of different things. That being said, the whole thing terrifies me. I mean, like we're going to hear John say in a minute that nothing terrifies him about his grant. Um, the whole thing from a leadership perspective terrifies me. And it's part of the reason why I'm so glad Nikki's here now because I mean, like I think I've said this earlier on this podcast, like I'm legitimately, it is a legitimate question for me of whether or not we can pull this off. I feel very clear about like how we are going to try and pull it off. I understand that and why that's different and like why it's valuable. But I believe and trust in Nikki that she can do it. But if she weren't here, my anxiety level would be, through the roof. How's that? Is that honest enough and behind the scenes enough?
Yes, that is honest enough. That's perfect. I love it. Thank you. And what about you?
Yeah, if I take a really good perspective, like we're not a storytelling organization, and if I take, our grant is Parish
But
Collective.
you all tell the best stories.
Well, I'm just gonna say, and then we've got three like Parish Collective,
Yeah.
and Impact Partners, and Really Good Together, and it's not like we don't tell stories, and it's not like there aren't stories out there. And we've done some things at Rooted Good around trying to shift the narrative, even around like to help people see what's happening in the landscape around church assets. So there's some, but this isn't our skill set, and we're all learning. But I think what aligns us as the three organizations is we believe the story of the church is up for grabs, and we
Yeah.
understand that more than ever right now. And we actually know the stories that are out there. We know where we want people to look, but it's like, okay, now let's work with experts. So in that way, it's like it does feel like we're all learning. Um, and we all need this work done. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that's good. Well, I mean, I think as a segue, and I'll hand it off to you,
yeah.
Shannon, to help us enter into this video or interview well. I mean, is that, neither of you are media companies, neither of you are media organizations.
Man.
And so, and I feel like while y'all are, and many of the organizations you're partnering with and working in, I mean, the scale at which this grant invites us to consider
Mm,
to be speaking at the platform we're invited to consider being standing upon, that is very different and new to each of you. So I'm excited to have this next conversation with somebody who's like, oh, we've done this, we've done this, and I hope that it's encouraging to the other listeners. But Shannon, how do you want to intro us?
Okay, so I had the privilege of speaking to John, who's the CEO of the Holy Post, and they are a media company. And I'll tell you, he just, since the day I met him, he just keeps going, this isn't new for us. This is exactly what we were created to do. But he really approaches it. He's got so much generosity of spirit, which is like, yeah, this is allowing us to expand and grow our mission. And I'm really grateful to Lily that they gave the Holy Post um, a grant, and I do think they're a resource for other grantees, because he's willing to talk to anybody. So, yeah, so let's listen to what John had to say about their grant. Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. I've got John with the Holy Post here to talk about their storytelling grant, and I'm so excited. If you don't know the work of the Holy Post, definitely go have a look, but you're going to learn about it today. So, anyway, John, hey, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Can you just tell us a little bit about you and your role at the Holy Post, and then um what you're planning to do with the storytelling grant?
Yeah. So, unnecessarily lofty title, but my title is CEO of Holy Post Media. So, um, Holy Post Media is it's a for-profit company. So it's structured as a for-profit almost entirely for the sake that we think it gives us greater editorial freedom than kind of looking over our shoulders and not offending major donors. And so what that has meant is we take on more often polarizing topics that the incentive structures of Christian institutions and churches is often to avoid those things because the preservation of the institution is kind of dependent on them not offending their funders. And so to receive this grant, we have a fiscal agent that is sort of technically the recipient of the grant that will then hire us to create content. And Phil Vischer is the founder of VeggieTales, and or the creator of VeggieTales, and one of the founders of Holy Post. So he half the grant will go to Phil creating children's content, and half to Holy Post, where we will create more adult focused content. And I can tell you more about what those deliverables will be, but
Yeah, so before that, so you basically split your grant in half,
correct.
and half is for an adult audience, and that's work that Holy Post does, and half is Phil
Yes.
is going to do children's content under a totally different
Yeah. So we're
or
not totally
entity.
sure yet about sort of the distribution plan of the children's stuff. So, I mean, this is like getting into the weeds of like bigger picture Holy Post considerations, but we essentially we think of a lot of the audience of Holy Post Media as disillusioned Christians that are kind of trying to reconcile their faith with what they see of Christians in the world. I think I think probably that's a part of what was appealing to Lily about this is that we really have access to this audience that is it needs the story to be redeemed about Christians, you know, about Christians in America, that their faith is wavering as a result of what they see of Christians. And so I think that while we actually believe we critique, especially we critique white evangelicalism that has been historically kind of been our tribe. And I think we've earned credibility by willing to critique the things that are done in the name of Jesus that are antithetical to the way of Jesus. And so therefore we have an audience that is like that is disillusioned, but we have credibility with them. I'm going to get back into the children's idea here, but we have credibility with them. And we actually believe that, yes, those things are true. There's a lot of brokenness in the church. There's particularly a lot of brokenness in white evangelicalism. But we also know that there's a whole bunch of Christians animated by their faith doing really good work. And so this gives us a chance to highlight something that we actually want to do. We actually believe, and we think we have a receptive audience to it. So if you think about VeggieTales, that I don't even know if this statistic is true. Phil doesn't know if this statistic is true, but by some statistic, there was a time where there 1 in 3 homes in America had a VeggieTales DVD. So this is like, you know, people know VeggieTales in the Christian world or not. It's shocked me
Sorry.
since I've been in this job. And so there's a whole bunch of those disillusioned, or we don't often use the word deconstructing, but certainly deconstructing would fit into this, Christians that are saying, I don't want to raise my kids on what I was raised on, because that did damage. I have issues with it, whatever. But I also don't want to raise my kids on nothing. And
Mm.
so for that profile of person that they want to put something in front of their kids, and they now trust Phil because of what he's done with his adult focused work. And
Mm.
so then that's where we're saying they know that he's willing to critique the same things we're critiquing. I would trust putting his content in front of my kids. So whether that becomes explicitly a part of Holy Post or not, that's the part that's to be determined. Does that
Okay.
make sense, Shannon?
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm really I love this kind of this thread you're pulling around credibility, that you found an audience and that you already have credibility with them,
Yeah.
and they trust the the stories you're putting out in the world. How is this grant um how's it going to change Holy Post or
Yeah.
shape Holy Post? I mean, there's that adage that grants allow you to do work you couldn't do otherwise, or to do work that actually helps you become more of what you want to be. Like, it helps you grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think for me personally, to be honest, is it helps us do what we already want to do because we can justify the spending on it.
Mm.
So the for me personally, I have wanted since I started here 3 years ago to draw out what I described before, that our public facing folks do believe that there's Christians animated by their faith doing good work. They just don't often tell those stories. And
Mm.
but they want to. I know they want to. I just need to be able to dangle something in front of them and say, here.
Why don't they? Why don't they tell those stories?
Um, I I say sometimes. Now we're getting into John, the amateur psychoanalyst of my teammates, and I'm saying this in a public forum. The I think that the phrase I would use with them often is, I just think we need to make explicit the things that you wish people understood implicitly. And
Mm.
so I think there's a little bit of a defensiveness of like, of course we know that. Of course we believe that. People should know that we know that and we believe that. I'm like, no, you just need to tell them that you
Mm.
know that and believe
Yeah.
that. I think that there is I think they are turned off by, as am I, the just kind of rah rah, everything's perfect. The way that the church has credibility is to like, keep the skeletons in the closet. When and so I think they get scared of getting close to that. Um, and then I think this credibility thing, the other way that I phrase it often is there's this one ditch of, if we ended every episode or every piece of content that we put out, a little too rah rah, like, and now get back into church. Hope to see you there on Sunday. You lose credibility with that very audience. And if you never do that, and we actually just become this, we will sometimes use the phrase refuge for disillusioned Christians. Like a refuge, like a pond that has no movement becomes a scummy pond.
Yeah.
Dirty and unhealthy. And so the other ditch would be, if all we ever do is critique, we actually create this refuge that we just wallow. And
Mm.
that's not good for us. It's not true. It's not good for other people. And so if we're being strategic, and I hope that we are uh, more sort of principled than we are strategic, but if we're being strategic, I think there is value in saying the way we cease to have credibility if we're too rah rah with this particular audience. Um, but if we don't take them anywhere generative or positive, then we just become a scummy pond. And so this grant allows us, draws us to do something that we want to do, which is maintain that credibility, but pull them to somewhere positive, or invite them to somewhere positive. I don't want to pull them, invite them to somewhere positive.
Yeah, entice them,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, so you've used the word audience a lot, and
Yeah.
so you're like really clear on who your audience is. It's adults, it's
Mhm.
disillusioned Christians, some of them still in church, some of them not. Um, but you're just going to keep serving that audience, if I hear you correctly.
I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, we would like that. Again, the funding makes it possible for us to maybe amplify things that we're already doing. We think there's a whole lot and a large and growing uh, demographic that fits that profile that I'm describing that we aren't currently reaching. So we do hope we grow it, but not to necessarily to a different profile. Same profile, just more of them.
There's more of them.
Yeah.
And because how long have you been around? How long's the Holy Post been around?
So
Serving that audience.
the podcast has been around since 2012. The growing into a broader media company beyond that flagship podcast, we have more than the Holy Post podcast. We have a number of different offerings. That's more like 2.5 years. So like I came in, I was hired 3 years ago to turn what was a hobby project into, kind of coalesce it into some larger vision than that. And that's been kind of over the last 3 years.
Cool. Okay. So success, I mean, it's a 5 year, you've gotten the 5 million for 5 years.
Yep.
2.5 is going to be children's content, half
Yep.
adult content. But what success look like? Like if you guys hit it out of the ballpark,
Yep.
what will the impact have been?
Um,
Different.
yeah. So, I mean, I think there is this, like some of the sort of before and after surveys we do will be around like whether people's own faith, um, basically like I wish I would have looked at this before, Shane. I'm sorry, but like the surveys, like where is their how have other Christians impacted their own faith, like positively, negatively, or neutral? And uh, we would like there to be like an increasing amount of like other Christians have shaped my own faith. It's very interesting, even in our surveying and in broader surveying. This is not my sweet spot, but this idea that like sort of Christians out there have negatively impacted my faith. Christians in my life, my own community that I actually know have positively impacted my faith.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
anyway, which is just kind of an interesting piece of it. So I think that, yeah, I do think, you know, trying to think about whether it's okay to say it this way is just like we hope that this has like grown our audience, um, so that we have access to more and more of this profile of person, and that with that access to that profile of people, we will have invited them to not give up their faith, and so we will sometimes say about like the success of Holy Post would have been that broadly, and so I think this grant fits within it, is that we would have helped to close the back door of the church.
Mm.
And and
No,
I would want to define church broadly of being an embodied community with other people that are trying to more faithfully follow Jesus. And so institutionally that can take on a lot of different forms, but that we just I like my heart has broken for it took me a while. My previous work was with like youth ministry. My heart broke for young people. My heart is broken for those that feel like they're in this position of either giving up the faith of their childhood, or be a bigoted jerk, and if those are the two options, um, then that's heartbreaking for people, and we hear that so often from our audience. It's like that is what they feel like they've been given the option of, and we're like, that actually those are not the options. Like that is not the faithful option. So
well, I'd love to. I just want to pick on this for a second. How do you get audience feedback for your work?
yeah, so I'm like learning.
Know that the stories are actually doing what you want them to do. And
Yeah, this is a part of the hobby project turn like more robust organization, is like, oh, we and the grant is helping the discipline of like more regular surveying. So we're like learning how to do surveying in a way that's like not just interesting information, but it's like actually actionable information for us. So some of that is we're trying to do surveys that help us lead a sustainable business, but like if within that we can also learn from surveys. And then we, by being a media company in a digital media era,
huh.
there's no shortage of things that we hear from people. Haters, lovers, kind of cult like love of what we're doing. And so that can be, we
Okay.
have greater and greater organizational systems for saying, and then what do we do with that information is another question. But for saying, what are people saying, whether that's in our DMs and that's comments on social media, that's in our inboxes, um, our paying community, like we have more of a kind of chats that go on there, but kind of collecting those things, that's like the less formal part of it. So
I was just curious. Okay, I have a few more questions for you. Yeah, where do you is there a part of the grant that scares you at all, or you think, how are we going to do that?
we
Or
we
going
got
to
so
take you?
lucky after talking with other people. It's like we were lucky. I don't know, lucky or disciplined in some ways to say like our number one thing was we do not want the tail wagging the dog. And
Mm.
so we just said, like, and again, I think this is a little bit different than a lot of people. Like, we are not a grant dependent organization. We are not a donor dependent organization. We are trying to be self sustaining so that we can be, and that's not a criticism of anybody, just to be clear, but like we're
Mm.
trying to be self sustaining so that we don't get in situations where the tail wags the dog. So that I feel like that has been like my number one charge in everything that we're trying to do, not just in this grant, but in general. So that meant um, I only put sort of deliverables that I felt like we are capable of acting on and that we would want to do whether we got the grant. And so we were hyper disciplined in that. Um, and so essentially, I mean, gosh, I hope this is appropriate amount of humility. It's like I don't have a lot of nerves about our ability to execute on the things because they're things that we are like already built to do. Um,
Mm.
so we're doing it probably at a little bit, but not even dramatically. We are doing it at a frequency and a quality that is above what we would have been able to do otherwise. But it's something that we would have been doing otherwise.
In some ways, we've talked to people on this um show through this podcast series that have like gotten the grant a year ago and some that have just gotten it, right? Like the money came in
Yeah,
December. And you just got the money, right? Like you
yeah,
just got
yeah, yeah,
you're in the competitive
yeah.
round.
That's right.
But it's interesting and talking to you in some ways it feels like you've had the grant already because like you it just slotted into what you're already doing.
Right.
It's not um program. It's you didn't need to build the ship to get going,
That's right.
which is really cool. Okay, are you looking for any partnerships or are you looking to
Yeah,
write with others? I mean, I know that we were together in Dallas and this
yeah,
one grantee said, "Well, if you ever want to test content, we've got a whole bunch of
yeah.
cohorts." Like,
That's right.
what
That's right.
is that other people could partner with Holy Post, or
Yeah,
are you looking for content, or
yeah. That's good. I think those like that was so fun. That idea um, like these kind of focus groups that exist because that other grantee, works with a bunch of pastors, and so it's like we got cohorts of pastors where you could put some of this content or other Holy Post content and get some real honest feedback from people. And like, man, that is like a set up focus group for us that's so valuable. So that's a very fun, creative idea that I think only happens by spending some time with other people. I wouldn't have thought about that as a need, and that's attractive. I think in some ways the sourcing of stories. So I haven't hit on what we're going to do. Essentially, adults, 20 videos that will be um, 10 minutes ish, explainer videos. The entry point will be some brokenness of what's going on and critique because that's what we do kind of more naturally. So it might
yeah,
be the brokenness of the immigration system and kind of what's going on in the country right now. And weaved within that story will be the work of an individual church or an individual person or an individual organization that's doing great work on immigration. There'll be a corresponding podcast and a corresponding written piece that goes with that. So 20 topics for the adult focused, essentially 20 topics for the children's focused videos, where Phil's like developing sort of this whole uh, theme or this whole story, this whole the next Veggie Tales. I mean, not at that scope, but like new characters. And then those characters will meet kids and families that are doing something about some topic, so that a kid could be watching this and say, "Wow, that kid
Yeah.
and his mom or his dad are out delivering meals to immigrant families that don't feel comfortable leaving their house right now. We could do that too." And so we're going to need 40 stories, 20 for the
Mhm.
children's and 20 for the adults. And we're pretty well connected. I'm going to be explicit. I've said this often in Dallas, but it's like we're pretty well connected, especially in evangelical or evangelical adjacent organizations and churches and individuals. Um, but I think it might be that might be uh, short-sighted or less than what we're capable of if it was just kind of all from our existing network. So I do like the idea of sourcing stories from other organizations connected to these storytelling initiative. I hope that makes sense. Those are the two easiest ways to
Okay.
imagine.
Um, wait, have you picked all of your 20 topics yet?
No, so this is also great that part of what we said to Lily is like we don't want to tell you the exact topics right now, because part of what we want to do is you respond to the way that what we're good at within this is we are probably better, because it's more native to what we're doing, at knowing how to get eyeballs on what we're doing. That's like exactly what we exist to do. Whereas some of the other grantees, that's like a new challenge, maybe,
Yes. Yeah. Distribution. Distribution is not your issue.
Exactly. That's our challenge. And so we just said a little bit of like, trust us. Here's some examples of things. But when the stuff hits the fan about fill in the blank, there's ice raids. This is the easiest example to go back to. For us to have a video that's ready to hit the moment uh,
Mm.
means we don't want to tell you right now. We don't want to be limited right now by what we're going to be doing 5 years from now. But this is the type of topics that we're doing. So I think we did have 40 topics on what we listed, but I don't know what they'll be.
Okay. And when do you expect your first ones to go live?
Um, one more thing I'd say is like to get nitty gritty on this is the adult ones are the ones I know better. That every year we will
Panda? Sorry.
maybe,
Okay.
but not necessarily. Um, the so that'd be a good idea, Shannon. The we will do 4 a year that I forget what we called these, that are like slightly lower production value. We won't have a documentary crew that goes and follows the family that's serving the meals. We'll just interview them. We'll maybe have some B-roll footage from their own archives.
Yeah.
But one a year will be like a bigger one. That's a higher budget thing that'll have a documentary film crew that goes and follows somebody. So the pace that we're going to try to hit is, uh, and we're going to try to get them all out in the first 4 years. We'll see, but it's 5 a year, 1 a year that is more heavily produced, 4 a year that are less. Um, so I would think our first one would probably be out in June of this year, but maybe not.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And quick.
Because we're in a different situation, Shannon. Like, this is what we do. So
Yeah. Really good. Man, I love it. I mean, I wanted to talk to you because I just loved hearing what you're doing. I'm a fan of the Holy Post, and so we're working on a similar audience. So
yeah,
um yeah, I feel really excited.
I,
Um
I feel right. I feel again. I think we're an outlier in some ways. I feel excited about kind of. I just loved. Maybe this is too inside baseball, but I just loved being with other people that have received this. I just felt like I got invited into a whole new world that I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew that there's a whole bunch of people doing great work out there. It's fun to meet a whole bunch of other people doing great work. So I kind of like being a part of, in some ways, this network of, uh, the other recipients that received this grant that have obviously been vetted to say like these are great people and organizations. So if we can be helpful, I would love to be helpful. And I think especially because again, because of the way that we're outliers, we might have the ability to help in different ways than others. So
And I think, we did talk about the potential of doing like where are the possibilities for working at an economy of scale. And I know you and Josh are
yep,
um, starting to think about
yep,
PR play.
yep.
So we'll talk about that another time. But hey, I'm really excited. If people want to find you or get in touch,
Yep.
you have
John, Jon at holypost.com.
great. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
um, okay. So what'd you think? What came up for you?
Well, I will
Well, I
say,
go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah.
sorry, jumping in. I really admire John's humility and it also real clarity about like, yeah, this is kind of our thing. Also, I appreciated your question, Shannon, though, of like, okay, but what is this inviting you to do or think differently about? And I'm excited that it has freed them up to think more broadly about the audience that they've known for so long and try some other things. Hopefully, I love um the clarity of their concept and I'm so grateful for that. They know what works and they know what doesn't. And so I appreciate him naming that and at the same time his obvious their obvious openness to other ideas from folks who are outside even your idea of coming up with videos that are tandem to one another. I mean, like it sounds like, oh, there could be some possibility there. So anyways, just overall really encouraged and I think that I hope others are too. And I think that having that confidence in this pool, the confidence of clarity of like how this thing works in this
Yeah.
pool of grantees is going to be really important, especially as folks begin to connect and hopefully collaborate. So Josh, what were you going to say?
That's exactly how I was like I was thinking about it from this like tool or ecosystem perspective. When John was saying, especially at the beginning, when he was saying, we're a for-profit company and intentionally so because it frees us up to take on topics that maybe others don't feel like they can touch. I mean, I can hear, of course, the echoes of the nonprofit executive's response to that would be, well, you're beholden to profit. You don't have the freedom to actually do what needs to be done. You always have to go and chase bottom line. And I'm not trying to say that one of those is right or wrong. What I appreciate is that this ecosystem of storytelling encompasses all of that, like that we have people approaching these projects from various different ways. I mean, our partner in this project is VTS that has this sizable endowment that like this grant is great. It's their, the work in the grant that's for them is definitely theirs to do, but
Oh,
it's not like they went and got this grant because they somehow needed it for their survival. We're a very new organization, and it's we didn't need this for survival, but we needed something. I mean, we certainly have to generate revenue, um, and so it's just I love that the ecosystem is diverse enough to be able to hold all of these things, but working on the same thing. Like Shannon, what you were saying at in the first part of this podcast where you're saying like the story is kind of up for grabs and that it's going to take more than just one set of perspectives to address it. And so I love that they're in this with the rest of us,
I
with
think,
all of us. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's interesting thinking about that, like market, like being a for profit business. I think what it means is they've proven there's an audience, right?
Yep.
Like that, like, and I love it that Lily invested in that to say we want to grow into this audience, right? But I think there's something they've proven that there's demand. And so for me, I get really excited about, wow, if this strengthens the Holy Post, what does that do to the media landscape? Which I think we need new media. We need media companies thinking about that as well as our storytelling initiatives, which will
And
play in that space, but differently.
I'm also grateful for seasoned learning that this isn't hypothesis, this isn't assumption, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also I welcome all of that because I'm excited that this grant allows us to allows organizations to experiment in spaces that they haven't before, learn new things. But I know he said he's not a psychologist, but even getting to talk about like why the things they've learned about why people behave or are functioning this way, they are strong in two areas that across the board folks have continued to name as a challenge for them: distribution
Yeah.
and evaluation.
Yeah.
and they have clarity about how and why they do each of those things, and I, would be excited to dig even deeper into those things when I've been working with folks as they've been, like, thinking about how to name that for themselves, how to name distribution, because I think sometimes there's this misunderstanding of what that even means. Just
Mm,
listing places that you'd like to be distributed through or on is very different than having pathways
yep.
into those spaces. Understanding the hurdles, understanding the gatekeepers, and so I hope for continued conversations with John about like what are also the hard lessons they've learned here, that
Yeah.
over the years. What have they have found does not work? How have they found a way to have an authentically Christian voice
Mm.
that's not cheesy, that's not but's taken really seriously in a larger media landscape. I think all of that is really encouraging. I hope for more conversations with him.
And okay, so just to not to
Mm.
totally like fanboy on them, but I mean, there's a couple of things from a leadership perspective that I just really, really respect. And one of them is that they've been doing this since 2012. Like the organization has been around for over a decade, and at some level, apparently has been managed. I don't know, who knows what their finances are, but like seems to be going fine. Like we'd all heard of them. Everybody I know, knows about Holy Post. But the founders had enough sense to understand that that CEO role was maybe not one that they wanted, or maybe not one that they had the skill set for, or whatever. I don't pretend to know that answer. And they hired John to do it. And that is like, you so rarely find that sense of self understanding in this world that like, I love it when I see it.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It feels like such a good company or good organization. Um, I want to change a bit though. I want to go to, I think there was something interesting. I just wonder what you think about this. They've really divided their grant into two.
Yeah.
And it's like got two fully different streams with they've got this one stream that clearly sits in the Holy Post audience, which is adult. It's, they're aimed at adults. And then they've got this other bit, which is all about going after the children, like what's what's going to replace Veggie Tales. Elizabeth's too young to know what Veggie Tales was, but
No, I was VeggieTales. I was shaped by the blueberry, the asparagus, the cucumber. No,
will
but
say, You, Myself, and Bob, if you haven't read it, is probably the best organizational book out there. So, anyway, sorry, go, Elizabeth.
well, I want to point out that they've divided that and they're divided their grant into two with two very, very clear audiences. And this
Yeah.
is a theme across all the grants that I feel like if folks have gotten wildly, wildly clear about their audience, the domino effect through concept, distribution, evaluation, who needs to be at the table, all of that makes sense if you have gotten wildly clear about your audience. And so they've divided it into not based on concept but based on viewers,
Yeah.
and that I really admire. So good.
Agreed.
Me
But they
too.
also, the media company has more than just the sort of standard Holy Post podcast that we think of. I mean, they've got uh oh, I'm blanking on the rest of their lineup, but the other people in their organization have their own podcast. Now,
Mhm.
my understanding is that mostly it has been just podcasts, but they also have a Patreon, and they write newsletters. So it's not like doing something outside of their main flagship podcast um is like, completely foreign to them. So yes, it is. I agree with you. It is split in two ways, but I don't. I think maybe from a great reviewer perspective, they looked at it like, well, this is a media company. We don't see this as like Holy Post podcast. We see this as Holy Post media company. They do media things, and this still fits within. I don't think you. My point is like, I don't think you could go to Lily and suggest two or three things that are wildly divergent from your core business and still expect to get
No,
funding.
no, but I think it is like from a programming. So there, it feels like they've got different programming leads. They're really, I
Mhm.
think they're being very strategic, and
Yeah.
I love it. I'm curious to see how many more grantees are focused on children, because I'm seeing a lot more that are focused on um young adults and up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very few. I mean, comparatively, not as many focused on kids, but I'm so excited about. And you just said something, Shannon, that I want to point out because you said they're being really strategic, and he used that word too. And then he corrected himself, and he said, I hope we're being, or I don't want to misquote him, but principled.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more that we're being principled, and I think I loved that he said that, and I am strategy is my catnip, so, like, I'm, like, all for it, and, um, love a good theory of change, but I really respect him actually correcting himself and saying, "Actually, it's about a set of principles that
Mm,
we believe
you're right.
in and that we stand upon that inform this work."
Mm,
And I hope that as folks are thinking and planning and strategizing, which all should be happening, is that they are going back and really evaluating what are the principles that
mm,
are informing this work ultimately that
Yeah.
undergird and are the thread and through line for all of it. Because I think my assumption would be is that has informed why they've been able to so clearly
yeah.
choose audiences and divide their efforts in really, really clear ways, that they're staying true to their identity.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. What else do you think we should tease out? Like what I mean, I think there's so much richness there, but
Well, I was so okay because this has come up a lot, especially in the Christian practices grant. As you know, we're sitting here today. LOIs were just due, I guess, although you didn't have to necessarily submit one in order to do this. So people are working on full proposals now.
mm,
And they've upped them. The amount is $2.5 million, and that's more than what most places can handle. And so there's a lot of talk about fiscal sponsorships. We've been in lots of these conversations trying to help connect people to fiscal sponsors, et cetera. And he mentioned that they had one, and
mm,
had to get one obviously as a for profit in order for Lily to be like. I've been around these conversations at the endowment before, where they'll try to help you strategize or connect you to a local university or some Catholic community foundation in that world plays a lot of these roles. What did y'all think about? I mean, do you have experience with this fiscal sponsorship world, and have you seen people navigate it other than John and Holy Post here?
Well, Shannon, I mean, y'all are a group of organizations partnering together with one fiscal sponsor. How are
we
y'all navigating that? How has that worked?
okay, no, we are three groups that applied together, but the grant we applied as Wesleyan Impact Partners, EIN and through their balance sheet. Basically. So they took the grant and and then we've all got some, we're all written in terms of the budget for the work that we'll do over the 5 years. So it didn't work like a fiscal sponsor in that way. And I never have done a fiscal sponsorship before personally, but I know a lot of people that do. Um, and then there are organizations that are set up that's all that's the bulk of what they do, somewhere like Tides. Um, but I think it's getting trickier and trickier because I'm same, Josh. I had several people call and ask me, do you know anyone that'll be a fiscal sponsor? Um, and but a lot of people that could be fiscal sponsors are going for the grants. And
Right.
so, and I know that there's a limitation on how many organizations you can be a fiscal sponsor for. So, you know,
I think you're right. It is like the trickiness comes in the sense of like, what does fiscal sponsorship mean? I mean, what you just described, Shannon, is not unlike what we have with VTS. I mean, there's important nuances and differences there. And VTS is very clear that they were not going to be a pass through, and we didn't ask them to, didn't want them. There's real work for them to do there. But I think that's actually this sort of like informal world of fiscal sponsorship is actually what's kind of making up the bulk of these de facto. 'Cause I don't know what but like my understanding is like probably Parish Collective couldn't have held $5 million in one check from Lily, and I don't know about Rooted Good, but like we
Mm-mm.
couldn't have at Future of Faith, and so the partnership didn't come about for that reason with VTS, but it certainly is one of the problems that it solves because actual fiscal sponsorship means a whole thing. Like they're taking legal responsibility for your organization, and then there's like a percentage that you have to pay. I mean, you mentioned Tide, Shannon. I'm on the board at Sacred Design Lab with Angie Thurston and Casper, and like that Tides is their fiscal sponsor. And like there's this like very clear agreement about what Tides does and what they get for it. And it's kind of a trade-off. I'm not commenting on the Tides SDL relationship. I just mean, like, anytime you look at that, you have to evaluate, like, is it worth what you have to, it's 5, 6, 7% of your overall budget. Is that worth it?
And we've got a lot of universities in this pool, right, that are that obviously are big
It's
enough
more
that
than 5% at the
that's like,
universities.
yeah, it's way more than 5%, and they're having to figure out this across departments. We've got small entities that have never received a grant this large, yet are big enough to hold it, but
Yeah.
have strategic partnerships to distribute those funds. It's I think it's a real challenge, and at the same time, in churches for that matter. I mean, there are churches, right, that are taking on this amount of money, and at the same time, having worked in narrative change work, it takes a lot of money to
Yeah.
do good media work. And this is not about building a program. This is about, and I mean, like, to create a strong a strong documentary, to create, I think this is what's different about narrative change and storytelling and media work, is the amount of money needed to just create one product.
Yeah.
It's a very different, and I'm not saying, I mean, people are creating lots of different products, but a lot of people who are used to applying to Lilly grants are used to applying with a program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not a program grant. And I think that's a big challenge. And for folks are surprised maybe by feedback to their grant, or surprised by the amount and the cadence, is actually, if you were making a certain type of media, you need that upfront money
Yeah.
to get going. And so it's
Well,
a wide spectrum.
we in our planning grant, we had Andrew Chater in the room, who's like on the BAFTA committee and, producer, screenwriter. And we said, 5 million. And he goes, you can't even touch some of the things you want to do with 5 million. And it was
I mean, this is a conversation for a different day, I think, because it gets us far afield of Holy Post. But I mean, like, on the one hand, yeah, you're right. Like, the 5 million only goes so far. And on the other hand, like, we're doing right now, currently, we are doing a thing on this podcast that would have been unthinkable even 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and it's free. Or, I mean, what is the cost of Riverside? $20 a month or whatever the subscription is that we're paying for. I mean, it's like basically nothing. And so it's a strange bifurcated world where you can do all kinds of stuff that is actually pretty good for low cost, but then some stuff is, like, still wildly expensive.
And what do you really want to do, and for whom, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I
this
actually
But
agree.
anyway.
This is a good conversation for our next episode, actually. So I felt, let's hold it, because I think we
Great.
could dive deep
Oh,
into
yeah.
this one.
Okay, cool. Well, that's it then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
this is super interesting. I'll say, just to point out, like, if people are thinking about collaborating with Holy Post in the future, and I know I brought up Christian practices a number of times already, but if for our application, we are working with them. We are explicitly partnering with them because we are trying to put together, this sort of like updated Christian practices for the nuns and duns based on, some of the original research that I've done, and then partnering with a couple of other people. But, like, how can we update these Christian practices in a way that these people could carry with them into the modern world? Holy Post has this audience obviously on lock, and so it became like a natural partner for us to think through. And John was so great, super easy to work with. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't want to speak for him, but I just mean, like, my experience of getting on the phone with him and talking through a project, and then, getting real clear very quickly was awesome. And what a wonderful entity to have in the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shannon, thank you for doing the interview. These continue to be incredibly enlightening. Every single time we keep learning more and more. I mean, whenever I listen to them as the prep for the show, I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, I feel like my own project just got better, and I hope others feel the same. So thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Elizabeth, for facilitating the whole conversation throughout the episode. And we'll see you all again next time. You've been listening to the Backstory Podcast. For all the episodes and more resources, head over to www.futureoffaith.org/storytelling.